Okay, please come to order. We will now go on the record. Good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Badel. I'm the acting chief engineer for the Kansas Department of Agriculture, Division of Water Resources, and I am serving as the presiding officer over today's hearing. I am in Manhattan, Kansas, and with me are KDA Chief Counsel Kenneth Titus, staff attorneys Kelly Nowinski-Wenzel and Stephanie Murray, and our court reporter. Today, we are holding a public hearing in the matter of the designation of the Wichita County Local Enhanced Management Area in Wichita County, Kansas, or Wichita County LEMA. That's LEMA, as we will refer to it. Today is Friday, August 14th, 2020. Time is 9:05 a.m. We are in the midst, and I hope nearing the end, of a global pandemic of the COVID-19 virus. In an effort to reduce everyone's risk, but continue with the important work of managing our water resources, we are conducting today's hearing partially in person, but also connected with some of the hearing participants via Zoom video conferencing. For those that want to observe the hearing today and not necessarily participate by giving testimony, the hearing is being live streamed on KDA's YouTube channel, and the video of the hearing will be archived and available on the KDA's website for later viewing. We are also connected via Zoom to the St. Anthony Catholic Church Parish Hall in Leoti, Kansas, where Western Kansas Groundwater Management District Number 1, or GMD Number 1, is hosting a space for the public to attend and participate in the hearing. Because we want to make the hearing as clear and complete as possible, we have required that anyone who wants to give oral testimony at today's hearing from a location other than Leoti to make arrangements 24 hours ahead of time. And likewise, for anyone wanting to share a visual presentation, we have required that the presentation be provided to us 24 hours ahead of time so it can be displayed during the oral testimony. If you wanted to include a visual presentation but did not provide it by the deadline, I will still accept it as written testimony if you get it to me in the next 2 weeks. If you have not already done so, I would ask everyone present at St. Anthony Catholic Church Parish Hall in Leoti, Kansas, to please sign the attendance sheet. If you plan to give testimony, please indicate that on the sign-in sheet. Additionally, a record is being kept in Manhattan of those individuals that requested to provide testimony from a location outside of Leoti. This hearing is being held pursuant to KSA 82A 1041B, which governs the establishment of local enhanced management areas, or LEMAs. The LEMA process requires that 2 public hearings be held. An initial hearing over 3 questions to determine if there is a need for the LEMA, and then, if the need is found, a second hearing to determine if the LEMA plan that the GMD has proposed is appropriate to address the need. And finally, if the results of both hearings are favorable, the LEMA may be established. Pursuant to KSA 82A 1041B, timely notice of this public hearing was published in the Scott County Record on July 16, 2020, and in the Wichita County Native Sun on July 15, 2020. Additionally, each water right owner within the boundaries of the proposed LEMA was also mailed an individual notification of the hearing. Today is the initial hearing where we will cover the 3 topics that are prescribed by statute. Number 1, whether one or more of the following circumstances exist, and I'm paraphrasing here. A, groundwater levels are declining or have declined excessively. B, the rate of withdrawal exceeds the rate of recharge. C, water is being wasted. Or D, water quality is being deteriorated. 2, whether the public interest requires corrective control provisions. And 3, whether the geographic boundaries are reasonable. So those are the topics we are limited to covering today. And I want to be clear that today we are not covering the details of how the LEMA might work. If after today's hearing, the findings are favorable on all three of the points I just mentioned, then a second hearing will be held to consider the merits of the specific actions in the proposed plan. I will also note that the July 9, 2020 pre-hearing order included a deadline of July 31, 2020 for anyone wishing to formally intervene in this proceeding. We received no requests to intervene by the deadline. If you did not formally intervene, you may still provide oral or written testimony, and I invite you to give oral testimony today, whether you signed up in advance or not. While you may not be a formal party here or be represented by legal counsel, know that your testimony will be carefully considered as I seek to decide this matter. Today, I will accept oral and written testimony regarding the Wichita County LEMA. When we have heard the last oral testimony today, I will adjourn the oral testimony portion of the hearing, but will leave the record open and continue to accept written testimony until 5:00 p.m., August 28, 2020, which is 2 weeks from today. The order of events today will be that first, we will hear from GMD number 1, then we will hear from KDA DWR, and finally, we will hear from anyone else who would like to give oral testimony. GMD number 1 and KDA DWR are recognized as formal parties and are each represented here by counsel. While I am not expecting formal examination of witnesses, I understand that counsel may assist representatives providing oral testimony and ask clarifying questions as necessary. Oral testimony may be provided by any member of the public, including water right owners, businesses, organizations, or anyone else that wishes to place a comment on the record. I may ask clarifying questions of anyone who provides oral testimony to ensure that we have a complete record. Additionally, individuals may also ask clarifying questions. However, such questions shall not constitute a formal cross-examination or an attempt to undermine someone's testimony. If the people who are asked such questions want to answer, they are free to do so. If any person wishes to respond to a question in writing following the hearing, they will be allowed to do so. You may also provide your testimony or comments in written form. They may include rebuttal testimony based on anything you hear today. I will accept written testimony today, so if you are at the Leoti location, please provide it to Mike Meyer. And after today's hearing, you can email your testimony to Rhonda Hutton, and that's at ronda.hutton@ks.gov. Or you can mail your testimony to WHC LEMA, care of Rhonda Hutton, 1320 Research Park Drive, Manhattan, Kansas, 66502. Again, the deadline for submitting that testimony is Friday, August 28, 2020. If you are providing testimony by mail, it must be postmarked by this date. Prior to today's hearing, we have received pre-filed testimony from GMD1, KDA DWR, and various persons. The testimony has been posted on KDA's website, and to the extent the testimony is not presented here today, it is incorporated into the record of these proceedings. The documents have already been marked by the court reporter.
We've got them here for marking.
And as we receive testimony, it will be posted on the KDA website. This hearing is being audio recorded at the Leoti location, and it is being transcribed by a court reporter. So I would ask that you speak clearly so that she can hear you. We may have to make some adjustments as you approach to make your testimony. Please remember that only one person can speak at any time. When you approach to give your testimony, please state your name and your address before you begin your testimony. Does anyone have any questions before we begin? Okay. GMD1, if you are ready, let's begin with you.
Thank you for those remarks, hearing officer. I would like to just comment that I'm Tom Adrian and my associate Joe Uhlman are present by Zoom, and we're the attorneys that represent District 1. We've assisted them in the presentation, but we will not be necessarily asking questions or participating in this proceeding. And we can provide the court reporter with more detailed address information if she feels it's necessary. So again, thank you for conducting this hearing. And we will be presenting 2 witnesses on behalf of the district. One will be the district manager, Kyle Spencer, and the other will be Brownie Wilson from KGS. And they will simply introduce themselves and give their testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Kyle, whenever you're ready.
Hey. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Spencer from Scott City, Kansas, and I'm the manager for Groundwater Management District Number 1. Our office is located in Scott City. We've provided the hearing officer and the Division of Water Resources with our written testimony. My oral testimony will highlight this written testimony, and then I will answer any questions if you have any. As the hearing officer stated, there are 3 questions that need to be answered in this initial hearing for the LEMA. I'm going to address each of those items. First is whether one or more of the circumstances specified in sections A through D of KSA 82A 1036 exist. Second is whether it is in the public interest that the corrective controls of this LEMA be adopted. Third and finally, whether the proposed geographic boundaries of the LEMA are reasonable. Our testimony and evidence will address each of these 3 questions. It will show that the groundwater levels in Wichita County have declined and continue to decline, and the rate of withdrawal of groundwater within the area in question equals or exceeds the rate of recharge. Our testimony and evidence will also show it is in the interest of Wichita County residents and the public in general that this LEMA be established. And finally, we will show that the proposed geographic boundaries are reasonable. Regarding the first question, the hearing officer must determine that at least one of the factors listed in KSA 82A 1036 exist. Those factors are: A, groundwater levels in the area in question are declining or have declined excessively. B, the rate of withdrawal of groundwater within the area in question equals or exceeds the rate of recharge. C, a preventable waste of water is occurring or may occur within this area. Or D, an unreasonable deterioration of water quality is occurring or may occur. Today, I will address items A and B. Groundwater levels in Wichita County have declined excessively and continue to decline. This is plainly shown for all sections of the proposed LEMA of Wichita County in our Exhibit 1, which contains Kansas Geological Survey maps of the change in saturated thickness for the district. Percentage reductions in saturated thickness from pre-development to recent levels within the proposed LEMA vary from a minimum of 26% to a maximum of 100%, with values in excess of 60% dominating the area in question. Additionally, Wichita County has averaged an annual water level decline of 0.59 feet in the more recent record, according to Kansas Geological Survey. The aquifer's average remaining saturated thickness across the county is at or near the minimum thickness levels required to support irrigation or other uses. Therefore, the groundwater levels are declining excessively in the area. With regard to whether the rate of withdrawal of groundwater within the proposed LEMA equals or exceeds the rate of recharge, as is noted in our testimony, in our written testimony, on average, Wichita County averages 54,600 acre feet of pumping per year between the years of 2009 through 2015. Data and analysis by KGS in developing its groundwater model for GMD1 shows that recharge from all sources to the aquifer in this proposed LEMA currently averages less than 20,000 acre feet per year, and this will decline to 10 to 12,000 acre feet per year in the future. Compared to the 54,608 acre feet of pumping, a significant deficit is evidenced. This deficit will almost certainly continue without corrective controls. Taking these two items together, we assert we have proven the first question. Based on the wealth of data compiled by us and other reputable sources such as KGS, the area in the proposed LEMA is facing a critical water shortage due to declines in groundwater levels and due to the rate of withdrawal greatly exceeding the rate of recharge. The second question is whether or not the public interest of KSA 82A 1020 requires one or more corrective control provisions. Because of the critical water shortages in addressing the first question, we assert these corrective controls are necessary and in the public interest. More than that, our corrective controls are narrowly tailored to address the specific issue. Our proposed LEMA controls for Wichita County entail generally a 25% maximum reduction in water use for all irrigation appropriation water right holders for 5 years, with the goal to limit irrigation withdrawals to 246,882 acre feet over that 5-year period. This would significantly aid in stabilizing the water levels in the aquifer. We have applied a formula to each irrigation appropriation water right to determine each allocation for this 5-year period, and that formula can be found in our LEMA plan. And we have not required that vested right holders comply with the LEMA, but instead allow for voluntary participation by those users. The LEMA's proposed allocations only apply to irrigation appropriation rights, as irrigation accounts for 95% of the aquifer's use. While the plan does not include restrictions to other users, we recommend that municipalities, domestic users, stock water right holders, and industrial users voluntarily limit their consumption. This serves the current public interest and the future public interest of Wichita County residents. It serves the current public interest by keeping the LEMA narrowly tailored to prevent undue disruption to agricultural activities. And it serves the future public interest by ensuring the long-term viability of the aquifer for years to come, which is the ultimate goal of this LEMA. We've also served the public interest by providing ample notice and time to comment by all residents and water users in our proposed LEMA. With its ongoing water level declines and reducing well yields, additional management to extend the useful life of the aquifer of Wichita County has been the subject of extensive discussion and action over the years. In 2014, a GMD-wide district-wide LEMA was proposed, and the stakeholders of Wichita County voted in approval of having the LEMA imposed by a vote of 51 in favor and 31 against. That LEMA did not move forward as it was not adequately supported in other areas of the district. When the option for water conservation areas, or WCAs, were added to the Water Appropriation Act in 2015, local water users of Wichita County voluntarily enrolled in the Wichita County WCA. I've included some details about the Wichita County WCA as Exhibit 6 in our written testimony. But from March 2017 to December 2018, 26 users voluntarily enrolled in this program and voluntarily agreed to reduce their water use by roughly 29% for the first 7-year period, increasing to 50% in the final period of the WCA. These voluntary enrollments represent a potential water savings of over 2,650 acre feet per year, and this will increase in subsequent periods. While the accomplishments of the voluntary WCA have been significant, with 80% of the county's actively irrigated acres not currently enrolled, the water issues have not been fully addressed. Wichita County water users and stakeholders have worked with the GMD1 board for years, urging them to supplement the Wichita County water management with a LEMA. As is demonstrated in Exhibit 7 of our written testimony, listing the public meetings which LEMA proposals for Wichita County have been discussed, the LEMA process and the proposals have been presented to the public at public meetings, and there have been multiple GMD1 meetings with many interested people attending between 2015 and today. From March 2018 to March 2020, there have been 21 board meetings that have discussed this proposed LEMA, 6 special board meetings that discussed this LEMA, 2 annual meetings where the proposed LEMA was the primary focus, and 1 specific meeting in which the proposed LEMA was the only topic of discussion. In addition, we have a website that has a section that is dedicated specifically to this LEMA and includes all documents we've developed, and we've sent newsletters that discuss this LEMA. In response to public input from these meetings and notices, the LEMA plan was modified several times, incorporating changes such as adjusting the LEMA period from 15 years to 5 years, adjusting the allocation carryover, along with modifications to the allocation appeal process in order to better address previous voluntary conservation measures and water right ownership changes. All of these items represent significant public involvement that resulted in the locally developed and locally requested plan that the chief engineer is hearing today. So for those reasons, we would maintain that the areas proposed in this LEMA are in need of corrective controls, and it is in the public interest to allow for such controls. It is in the future public interest, as it would preserve the aquifer for years to come, and it is in the current public interest as we have narrowly tailored the restrictions to specifically address the water issue in a way we feel won't unduly disrupt irrigation water users. And it's in the public's expressed interest, as they have been well informed of the LEMA plan and they have expressed their support for it. Then the final question to be answered today is whether or not the geographic boundaries are reasonable. The proposed LEMA has very definite boundaries. These boundaries being the majority of Wichita County, absent the southernmost townships, which are not part of GMD1. As is demonstrated in the water data submitted in both our and KGS's written testimony, and from what I've already stated regarding the aquifer conditions in the proposed LEMA, the entire county within GMD1 is in need of enhanced management proposed by this LEMA. All this data reflects that the townships in our proposed LEMA are under great risk of running out of pumpable water from the High Plains Aquifer. GMD1 has been discussing LEMAs for the entire district, but due to the severity of water resources within Wichita County and at the urging of the county's water users, the district chose to limit the initial proposed LEMA to the area at greatest risk. And we've used reliable data to determine specifically those areas at risk, those at-risk areas. Because we've limited the scope to the most critical areas, our geographic boundaries are reasonable. So in conclusion, we contend that we've demonstrated all 3 questions to be addressed in this initial hearing are satisfied. First, the area of the proposed LEMA, without question, has declining water levels, clearly meeting the statutory test for LEMA consideration. Second, the proposed area would clearly benefit from the corrective controls allowed by the proposed LEMA to protect the future use of the High Plains Aquifer in this region. The majority of the invested persons were made aware of the LEMA process and invited to participate and kept informed of the situation. Thus, the public interest as envisioned in KSA 82A-1020 will be served by the adoption of these corrective control provisions, and these corrective controls will stabilize the aquifer and guarantee its use for future generations. And third, our geographic boundaries are reasonable because the entire county within GMD is in decline and in need of corrective controls. This concludes my testimony, and I will now stand for questions.
Thank you, Kyle. I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a question here in the room. You'll need to come up here, Wayne.
Yeah, Kyle, I would ask if someone has a question, they're going to have to come up and stand in front of the computer and ask us the question. We need to get that.
Good morning, I'm Wayne Bergstrom. My question is, go ahead.
Please say your name again.
Wayne, W-A-Y-N-E, as in John Wayne, Bergstrom, B-J-U-R-S-T-R-O-M, just like it sounds.
Thank you.
My question is, what is the reasoning based on that the recharge will be reduced by 20%? Are we going to get less rain, or you guys got long range forecasts, or what is the reasoning behind that assumption, which does factor in tremendous on the length of the groundwater? Thank you.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to answer that question from GMD1, feel free to. If not, you may or may not respond in writing later. We'll note the question for the record. Again, this is not the kind of hearing where we're doing that kind of examination. So I'll leave it to you. If you'd like to respond, let me know. If you'd like to respond later, that'd be fine too.
I guess first I would say, Wayne, probably with KGS's testimony coming up, your question may be answered. We're not saying the recharge is going to reduce by 20%. We are saying the recharge is going to continue to decline into the future. Part of that, I mean, some of the recharge, well, actually, I'll just leave it at that for right now.
Are there any other questions there in the room, Kyle?
Don't see anybody raising their hand at this time.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm up next.
Yes, Brownie, go ahead.
I submitted PowerPoint. You want me to show that, or are you going to show that?
We will show it, and don't forget, do please introduce yourself before you get going.
Yep. Okay, I see it now. My name is Brownie Wilson. I am the GIS and Support Services Manager in the Geohydrology section for the Kansas Geological Survey. Our address is 1930 Constant Avenue, Lawrence, Kansas, 66047. Okay, my oral comments today, I'm going to highlight our annual water level network, and then I'm going to briefly address 3 items that were submitted as written testimony. The KGS is a research and a service division within the University of Kansas, and we have been directed and funded by the State Water Plan Fund to provide technical support to the Western GMDs in groundwater research. So next slide, please. The KGS administers the Cooperative Annual Water Level Network. Each winter, the KGS and DWR measure about 1,400 water wells, primarily in the winter months, typically January. And we focus that effort primarily on the High Plains Aquifer in western and south central Kansas. The KGS has developed customized software that's coupled with GPS that allows us to visit and the same wells year after year. We measure the wells primarily using steel tapes or electric tapes with precisions down to 1/100th of a foot. Data is reviewed on site when we collect the information and also later when we come back to the office. And many times some wells will be revisited if deemed necessary. And then all that data is served online and can be retrieved through our Wizard database. The data is used primarily by us kind of to provide estimates of aquifer storage and changes over time. And this is appropriate at a regional and sub-county scale. Next slide, please. One of the articles of testimony that was submitted was KGS Open File Report 2019-16. This is a collection of maps that are showing the estimated aquifer thickness in pre-development, the average of 1997 to 1999, the average of 2017 to 2019. Those are shown on the screen, and what's not shown on the screen but were included in that report are the actual and percent change in the aquifer thickness from pre-development to the average of 2017 to 2019. The pre-development is based on well records taken from geologic bulletins, and they represent conditions typically in the 1940s, maybe some early 1950s, whereas data for the later time periods, those of the 1900s and 2000, are from Wizard. Now for Wichita County specifically, the average estimated aquifer thickness was 73 feet in pre-development, 32 feet in 1997, 1999, and 23 feet in 2017, 2019. From pre-development to present day, the average thickness in the aquifer in Wichita County has declined an estimated 50 feet, which represents 68% of that original pre-development thickness. And the reason for that decline is simple. Is more water is typically pumped from the aquifer each year than what goes into it through natural recharge. Next slide, please. The next article of written testimony is KGS Open File Report 2015-33. This is kind of a lengthy but exciting read on a report that documents the creation of a groundwater flow model that simulates groundwater conditions in GMD1 from pre-development to 2013. The modeling project started in January of 2013 and was funded through the State Water Plan Fund and GMD1 and was completed in July of 2015. Over that time frame, we had an advisory committee composed of members of GMD1, the Kansas Water Office, the Department of Agriculture, Division of Water Resources, and other members of the public. Groundwater models, I like to describe them as big water calculators. They take aquifer inflows and outflows to an aquifer system, and then they simulate what the changes in groundwater and stream flow are over time. So they're great tools for management and educational applications because they allow for a better understanding of the aquifer conditions and the ability to do future projections and scenarios into the future. On the screen there on the left side is a figure from that modeling report, is figure SA5. It shows the annual aquifer budget for Wichita County used by the model from pre-development to 2013, and then a future simulated scenario where there are no changes in water use policy. We call this our status quo scenario. Total recharge is a positive number. It's above the zero line. That represents all the water that's going into the aquifer as inflows. The biggest outflow of the aquifer is from wells. It's shown by that purple line. It's a negative number, which indicates water is coming out of the aquifer. And then storage is representing the change in storage in the aquifer over time. So over the transient period of the model from pre-development to 2013 in Wichita County, the total average groundwater pumping is showing a declining trend from highs in the 1970s. The average from pre-development to 2013 is 72,356 acre feet. This equates to about 1.8 inches a year over the county area. Over that same transient period, the total annual average recharge to the model is also showing declining trends, and averages from 1946 to 2013 21,340 acre feet. This equates to 0.56 inches a year. 0.15 of that is from precipitation. Now, because more water is being withdrawn from the aquifer than is replaced through recharge, the water levels have been declining in the aquifer as the aquifer loses storage, and that's shown by that maroon line. On the right side is figure SA6, and this kind of goes to the question that Bruce had, or Wayne had about recharge, and it shows, it's a little messy, but it shows the total recharge with that solid red line, but it's made up of many different things and many different components. Total recharge, that solid red line, is made up of recharge coming from precipitation, how that recharge is enhanced when it falls over irrigated fields. It also includes irrigation return flows and drainage from dewater units. And all of this recharge, as it travels through the subsurface, takes about a decade or so for it to travel through the vadose zone and then actually reach the water table. So irrigation return flows is shown by that lighter blue line with the X marks. That's showing a decline in response over time, and that's in response to the reductions in pumping that are occurring. Whereas the precipitation-based recharge, that brown line with the brown dots, is pretty consistent into the future. So as our irrigation return flows are starting to decline, the total amount of recharge is also starting to decline. However, that's coming from precipitation is pretty consistent, and from this point forward, it probably represents the likely source of new water coming into the system. Next slide, please. This is the last slide and addresses the last article of written testimony. This is a report. The KGS was requested by GMD1 to look at water levels and groundwater use in Wichita County from 2009 to 2015, and it calculates the average reduction in average annual amount of water use needed to produce, on average, stable water levels. For this analysis, the annual groundwater use was provided by the Kansas Department of Agriculture Division of Water Resources. DWR reviewed water use reports in relations to their annual allocations in order to determine new LEMA allocations. So over the time period between 2009 and 2015, total reported water use for all the irrigation water rights, including vested water rights, ranges from a low of 40,000 acre feet in 2015 to a high of 63,000 acre feet in 2012. And the average over the 2009 and 2015 time period is 54,600 acre feet. Groundwater levels are based on 33 wells that were measured each and every year, every winter period from 2009 to 2016. This allows us a consistent measure of the change in the water table across the time period for Wichita County. The average water level change ranges from a slight rise in 2015 of 0.02 feet to the largest decline, negative 1.3 feet in 2012, and the average over the time period is 0.59 feet. So figure 3 of that report shows the relationship then between groundwater use and water level change. This is a statistically significant relationship. The R-squared value there is 0.78. This indicates that 78% of that variation that we see in the annual water level change each year can be explained statistically by the variations in the total annual water use that is reported. So based on the correlation of conditions from 2009 to 2015, shown by that maroon square there on the graph, a 20% reduction in the average annual reported use would allow for stabilized water levels. And that's defined as a zero change in the water table. And they're shown by that olive triangle on the graph. Now this is important with this relationship, as we need to remember, the water level trends that we are monitoring from continuously recorded wells across the High Plains suggest that these type of conditions and the computed water use reductions will probably hold true for the next decade or two. However, the analysis should be repeated over time as those components that make up the water balance, those inflows and the outflows, as those slowly adjust to the new pumping allocations determined by any proposed management plans and changing offering conditions change, so will the inflows. And we'll probably need to repeat this analysis as time goes on. So with that, this ends my oral testimony. Thank you for your time, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Brownie. I don't have any questions at this time. Are there any other questions from Leota?
We don't see anything, Mr. Hearing Officer.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. I think that's who that was. All right. Is there anyone else from GMD1, Mr. Adrian?
Those will be the only witnesses, our only testimony that the district will present. So.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to KDA DWR.
Okay, I'm Stephanie Murray. I'm the attorney for DWR. DWR plans to offer testimony from two people, Lane Letourneau and Mike Meyer, and Mr. Letourneau will offer his testimony first.
Okay, thank you, everyone. My name is Lane Letourneau, Letourneau, and I am the Water Appropriation Program Manager for the Division of Water Resources, Division of Water Resources, Kansas Department of Agriculture's Division of Water Resources, and from here on, I'll refer to it as DWR. As the agency that administers the Kansas Water Appropriation Act and other laws applicable to water management in Kansas, DWR wants to provide testimony in support of the request by Western Kansas GMD number 1 to initiate a local enhanced management area for Wichita County. After our review of the proposed LEMA plan, we believe the plan and the conditions within the proposed LEMA support favorable findings as to all three criteria established in KSA 82A 1041B. We believe data provided by Brownie in the Kansas Geological Survey show groundwater level declines and groundwater withdrawals exceeding aquifer recharge within the proposed LEMA boundaries sufficient to designate the proposed LEMA. And we believe the geographic boundaries of the proposed LEMA are reasonable, as the KGS data shows a decline in the groundwater levels throughout all of GMD1. Additionally, DWR feels that the creation of this LEMA within the proposed boundary serves the public interest of KSA 82A 1020 as required. The plan was presented to the acting chief engineer with the recommendation of the GMD1 board of directors, and broadly speaking, DWR feels the elements of the proposed plan comport with basic state law and policy. We are also aware that there's been a strong local support for this LEMA, as well as ample opportunity for public involvement in the process. DWR feels this plan establishes management goals that conserve water in the Ogallala Aquifer, and we are committed to continue working with our stakeholders to provide conservation tools that maximize both the usable life of the aquifer and the economic security for Kansas water users. And we feel the approval of this LEMA plan would represent a positive step towards achieving that goal. And that's the end of my testimony.
Thank you, Lane. I don't have any questions for you at this time. And if there's no questions in Leota, I think we'll move on to Mr. Meyer.
I wanted to say before Mr. Meyer begins his testimony will reference existing water conservation areas in Wichita County. I have, and I think that you have in front of you, the findings and order designating Wichita County water conservation areas, and that was submitted online prior to the hearing, so this is maybe a redundant request, but I do want to ask that findings and order be admitted into the record as DWR's Exhibit 1, or I guess it's Exhibit A, but yeah.
It shall be admitted. I don't know about the exhibit numbers, but for sure. Okay. Mike, you're on mute, Mike.
Good morning. Mr. Hearing Officer, would you like to see the crowd here in Leota just Does that matter? Or?
I wouldn't mind if you want to swing me around. Very good. All right. Thanks. I'm a little dizzy, but I appreciate you doing that.
Okay. Yes, my name is Mike Meyer, Kansas Department of Agriculture, Division Water Resources. Our agency office is in Garden City, Kansas. I am the local water commissioner there. As the agency administers the Kansas Water Appropriation Act and other laws applicable to water management in Kansas, DWR wants to provide testimony in support of the request by Western Kansas Groundwater District Number 1 to initiate a local enhanced management area for Wichita County. Either myself or my staff have attended most of GMD1's monthly board meetings over the past 2 to 3 years and have particularly been involved in the GMD1 board's discussion regarding the proposed LEMA for Wichita County. When asked, we have assisted GMD staff with developing the proposed LEMA plan, which I believe meets the required criteria and sets desirable conservation goals that are in the public interest. My staff is equipped to continue to assist GMD1 with administration of this LEMA as needed and is ultimately designated. And I believe this LEMA can successfully meet the stated goals. I'm also aware that the proposed LEMA has received strong local support from Wichita County citizens. This support has been evidenced through the success of and support for existing water conservation areas in Wichita County. I've attached the findings in order designated the Wichita County Conservation Area to my written testimony, as I think Stephen referred to, Exhibit A. There has also been a strong public attendance at the monthly Groundwater District Board meetings, as well as the annual meetings where this LEMA was discussed, as well as public meetings hosted by local supporters themselves. Overall, I believe this LEMA should be approved and it advances water conservation in this area and will therefore serve the interests of all Wichita County public citizens. That's the end of my testimony.
Thank you, Mike. I guess I would ask one more document that it might be useful to have. I'd like to have the Wichita County WCA LEMA plan itself, in addition to just the findings and orders. So if someone could provide that to me on record, that'd be great. And I don't have any questions for Mike. I think we are at the end of the presentations by the parties, and now we'll move on to public testimony. And I've been provided a list, so I'm going to go through the lists, and then when I'm done with that, if you haven't signed up on the list but you still want to give oral testimony, we will give you an opportunity to do that.
Mr. Hearing Officer, this is Tom Adrian. The plan was submitted as part of Kyle's written testimony. Do you want something more introduced than that, or is that sufficient?
The Wichita County WCA plan was?
No, the LEMA plan.
The LEMA plan. Did I say LEMA? Oh, I forgive me. I misspoke. I meant the WCA plan because we have the WCA findings and orders, and I wanted the plan to go along with it.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Sorry for that mistake. Okay. All right. Well, the first name that I have from the public is Titus Yeager. Is Titus Yeager there? And would he like to give testimony today?
Want to provide testimony, Titus? Yeah, Mr. Jaeger declined at this moment.
Okay. Hey, Mike, would you mind just staying right there? Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks. Is Mr. Farron Watt there, and would he like to give testimony?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name's Farron Watt. I'm from Leoti, Kansas. We're third generation with fourth generation on our farm here in Wichita County. And I wanted to touch on three different topics today. I want to talk about the WCA, the irrigation wells here in Wichita County, and then our responsibility. In 2016, after months of discussion, a group of Wichita County producers and landowners entered into an agreement to voluntarily conserve one of our most valuable resources, water. This process was driven by the realization that over 5 or 6 decades, that this Ogallala Aquifer had been overused, which I think we've damaged forever. This effort was driven by a failed GMD-wide effort in 2014 to form a LEMA to help sustain the aquifer, which actually passed in Wichita County and failed in 3 of the 5 counties in the GMD. So our WCA effort encompasses nearly 13,000 acres. It's just over 21% of the active wells in Wichita County. In the WCA process, we agreed to reduce our water usage by 29% from the average consumption between 2009 and 2015. I have an example of one of those WCAs. We have a farm that had an irrigation history of 168 acre feet between 2009 and 2015. The WCA allocation was 119 feet for this new agreement. Our goal was not only to reduce the usage by 29%, but to also reduce and save even further. In 2017, we used 100.62 acre feet. In 2018, we used 80.07 acre feet. And in 2019, we used 80.02 acre feet for a 3-year average use of 89.57. So we not only reduced our usage by 29%, we also banked 29.43 acre feet on the average over those 3 years, and banked just short of 89 acre feet worth of usage over that 3-year period. So essentially, in 4 years or in 3 years, we saved an additional year's worth of water, even over and above the 29% that we committed to. This year, we will probably use our allocation because it's been a dry year, and we still think we'll be able to save most, if not all, of our banked water that we saved in the last 3 years. So this farm, over a 3-year period, the corn average on it has been over 230 bushels per acre. So water saving is achievable, and good yields can be achieved as well. Okay, as far as the wells in Wichita County, it's not uncommon to drive through the county and see wells that are no longer being used. In fact, I just noticed 2 wells that have been taken out of production since the first of this year, and I would guess that there are others. We often talk about how it used to be, and I remember growing up, wells were pumping 800 to 1,500 gallons per minute, and we thought a 500-gallon well was a small well. Recently, I was told that we have, I think, 15 wells in the county that will pump over 500 gallons now, and the rest of them are smaller than that. In fact, between 2005 and 2013, the average gallons per minute pumped by the wells in this county were 197 gallons per minute. And I would guess that number has probably declined since then. As of 2019, there were 919 irrigation wells in Wichita County. 573 were active, 346 were inactive, which is about 38% inactive, which is a staggering number. And then finally, our responsibility. Our grandfathers developed irrigation in the 50s and 60s and passed it on to their children, and they passed it on to us. What will our children and grandchildren remember that we passed on to them in the future generation? We must reduce and sustain this critical natural resource for future generations. These small communities have been blessed with large numbers of young families that are either staying on the farm or moving back to the farm. These young families are having children and making this their home. Let's take this long overdue opportunity to embrace this LEMA and do the right thing to keep our communities viable for many generations to come. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Wild.
Pardon?
Thank you for your testimony. Next, I'll note that Tammy Simons has submitted written testimony, but does not plan any oral testimony today. Mr. Tom Riddler, did I get that right?
Tom is declining at this point in time.
Okay. Mr. Frank Mercurio.
Good morning. My name is Frank Mercurio. I'm from Scott City, Kansas, and I'm chairperson of the Upper Smoky Hill Regional Advisory Committee. And I'm here to make a statement on behalf of that group today. The Upper Smoky Hill Regional Advisory Committee represents all or portions of 7 counties in west central Kansas, including Wichita County. Our mission is to represent water users in the region and address a variety of water resource issues. The focus of our efforts is to conserve and extend the life of the High Plains or Ogallala Aquifer within our region. This aquifer provides the vast majority of our water supply and is the sole source of supply in most of the region. The Upper Smoky Hill Regional Advisory Committee developed goals and specific actions to conserve and extend the life of our groundwater resources. Our highest priority is irrigation use, since it represents 96% of all water use within our region. Our first action under this goal, that is our highest priority, is to support the implementation of the Wichita County LEMA. We believe that the Wichita County LEMA is compatible with all the requirements for implementation of a LEMA. The depletion of the High Plains or Ogallala Aquifer within Wichita County is a matter of fact. This is clearly stated in the previously approved Wichita County Water Conservation Area Management Plan. And I quote, "The Kansas Geological Survey estimates that approximately 65% of the original water in storage within this portion of the High Plains Aquifer has been depleted," end quote. It is subsequently stated in this plan that the rate of withdrawal of groundwater within Wichita County substantially exceeds the rate of recharge within this area. There can be no doubt that this level of depletion poses a serious problem relating to a sufficient water supply within Wichita County. It is certainly within the public interest to act and to take measures that will mitigate the depletion of this vital water resource. Agriculture is the economic driver of Wichita County and the region. A substantial reduction in agricultural production will diminish the economy and adversely impact the communities that depend upon agriculture. Excessive depletion threatens the ability to supply feed and water for livestock production, which is the largest value-added sector of the local economy. In the extreme, communities and individual users may not have sufficient quantity and quality of water to meet domestic needs. The geographic area encompassed by the Wichita County LEMA is appropriate because all portions of the county have experienced substantial to extreme depletion. The entire county will benefit from the conservation that the Wichita County LEMA will likely achieve. Thank you for this opportunity to present testimony on behalf of the Upper Smoky Hill Regional Advisory Committee. That concludes my testimony.
I thanked Mr. Mercurio for his testimony. I was on mute, so he didn't get to hear it. So here it is. Thank you, Mr. Mercurio, for your testimony. That's the last person that I've got on my list of the public who might want to give testimony today. Is there anyone else, Mike, that is there that would like to give testimony?
I see none.
Okay, all right, thank you. Before we move on, can you make that bigger? we received a question over our YouTube live stream, which indicates two things. The live stream's working and somebody's able to ask a question. So I'm going to read the question for the first time here. The question is from Mr. Dale Bolin. It asks, for water right holders who enrolled in the voluntary water conservation area, how would contemplated LEMA restrictions affect these rights holders? Again, if anyone wants to take that question on, I invite you to do so. If you would rather respond to that later, you may do that as well. Would anybody like to respond to that question, probably from the GMD? Okay. So if we're declining to respond to that, I guess we'll just note that question for the record, and we'll go from there. All right. Well, at this time, I guess I will adjourn the oral testimony portion of the hearing, unless there's anything else for anybody. Okay, I'm adjourning the oral testimony portion of the hearing. I will leave the record open and will accept written testimony until 5 p.m. August 28th, 2020, which again is 2 weeks from today. And we are adjourned, everyone. Thank you.